In the past, mechanical watches had a usefulness you couldn't get anywhere else. But now, smartphones have all the utility you could possibly want and more. Which raises the question, do tool watches even exist anymore? It's a tough one to answer because the line is gray between luxury and utility, and many of us cling to outdated ideas as technology progresses. Just look at the comments on any of my recent videos and you'll see wildly different opinions on this topic. So let's get to the bottom of this. To begin, we need to discuss what a tool watch even is in the first place. Which is tricky to answer because I think the term tool watch has become a misnomer. You can really split the designation into two camps. The first is intent. A tool watch is simply a watch made to be used as a tool, like a piece designed for the purpose of diving, for example. The second is more about characteristics. A rugged and durable, often utilitarian design, high legibility and restrained finishing, a focus on functionality, practicality, and simplicity. The key is that in the past, these definitions were one and the same. Tool watches had a functional aesthetic because of necessity. They needed to look that way, to function best as a tool. Before the advent of quartz, analog mechanical watches were the only option someone had for their purpose. A timer had to be mechanical, and a diver needed to use a dive watch. And because of that, they were affordable. They were meant to be used as their design intended. Compare that to today, and it's a complete 180. Nearly every famous tool watch is a luxury piece. They use the aesthetic not out of necessity, but as a stylistic choice. When someone talks about a modern tool watch, they could be talking about two entirely different ideas. A rugged and affordable digital watch meant to be used in any harsh conditions, or a $15,000 status symbol with a utilitarian aesthetic, but objectively inferior technology. While both are technically tool watches, it's quite disingenuous to imply they're intended for a similar purpose. And I think this is why enthusiasts seem to have such differing opinions on the topic. They're conflating these two camps. Take for example, a number of comments I received on my recent dial color rating video. I was criticized for rating orange low, with the counter-argument that brands like Doxa use orange because it's the easiest to read underwater. And while that may be true in principle, I have to contest how much of a tool a $3,000 luxury watch with a high-polished case and bracelet really is. Especially when you get the same practical specifications and more reliability for only a few $100s with brands like Citizen. The vast majority of people aren't buying an orange Doxa for its superior legibility underwater. They're buying it for the fashion and aesthetic. That isn't to say it couldn't be used to dive, or any other dive watch for that matter, but I pictured a bit like a tool company selling hand crank drills with high polish, exquisite finishing, and exotic look handles for something like $2,000, when cheap and superior power drills exist. It's a luxury item meant for its aesthetics and craftsmanship more than its utility as a tool. A large aspect of this is the obsession with gear and utility. Many of us romanticize the everyday carry, or equipment used to fulfill a specific purpose. It seeps its way into any hobby it can. Collecting, camping, cameras, pretty much every sport. Even brewing coffee has become an interest surrounded primarily around gear. If you're interested in more of this watch discussion and analysis type of content, consider subscribing. A large philosophy behind my videos is getting into psychological topics and diving a bit deeper into the hobby than your average watch review channel. Thanks. Over time, the aesthetic of utility has become separated from actual utility. Hobbyists love LARPing so much that we've ended up with luxury tools and desk divers, with the facade of the visuals of a functional tool. For example, the reality of most dive watches is that they'll never even be used while swimming, let alone diving. And even if they were, it certainly isn't going to be at 300 or even 100 meters of depth. The recreational limit is typically around 40 meters, and most divers probably won't even hit that. The grand majority of situations someone is going to be wearing a dive watch these days is going to be in their casual day-to-day life, as a fashion and stylistic decision. Which is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a style or aesthetic. I enjoy the tool look as well. But where issues arise is with the criticism and delusion associated with believing an obsolete $10,000 watch is somehow a tool. Enthusiasts complain when water resistance or dial legibility isn't high enough, as if they aren't going to be sitting at a desk with theirs most of the time. We give into the marketing of these watches as tools and feed notions that influence design. Now, more than ever, the discussion in collector circles has centered so much on specifications. Many of us can't enjoy watches just because they're cool. We've bought into the idea that they need certain specs or looks to be useful enough, when our phones already do everything they can do and more. All this is to say, we should be making a solid effort to acknowledge that luxury tools are inherently oxymoronic, at least a little bit, and that actual tools should be affordable, or at least justify the price with a proportional amount of utility and innovation of such. So if watches are obsolete and tool watches have become a lie, does that mean there aren't any left? Not exactly. When mechanical tool watches were cutting edge, a Speedmaster was genuinely the best stopwatch to bring as a tool on a mission to space. And they were significantly more affordable than now as well. Adjusted for inflation, a Speedmaster in the 1960s would be around $2,000 in today's money, and a similar amount for a Rolex Submariner. What our modern era of watches has an advantage over back then is that our cutting-edge tool watches are actually cheaper now because of quartz. We have highly accurate, reliable, and tougher movements for a fraction of the price. Even solar quartz watches are affordable, thanks to Citizen's EcoDrive, among others, and smartwatches have come a long way in attainability as well. Obviously though, there's one name that comes to mind as a modern tool watch: G-Shock. They're more accurate, shock-resistant, water-resistant, easy to read, have more complications than practically any mechanical watch, for only a few $100s. A single battery lasts nearly a decade, and it requires no servicing or upkeep to use either. That's what a real tool looks like today. That's why they become the de facto standard for soldiers for decades. Their rugged design and affordability pairs perfectly with their utility. And speaking of the military, even though digital watches dominate the field, they also exist as one of the last professional sectors that still utilizes analog watches in some capacity as a tool. Usually issued to specialized units, a number of brands are still contracted to produce watches for military use. Marathon is among one of the only analog manufacturers left that are still available through procurement catalogs for the US military, and it's a similar story for CWC's SBS divers for the British military. Perhaps the most famous example is Zinn's relationship with the German military and special forces. Their EZM line, known as mission timers in English, are over-engineered specifically for military use, and to my knowledge, are all mechanical. Zinn's tegimented coating especially stands out as a genuine benefit over primarily resin and stainless steel digital watches for its excellent scratch resistance. But even with these examples and their high functionality, I suspect that the inner politics and financial relationship between the military and these companies plays a large role as well. There's more to these pieces than utility for these government organizations. Heritage and tactical style is still very much a thing. And no one says militaries were efficient with funding either. Most of these watches are paid for using allocated resources, and to your average person are still ridiculously expensive compared to a standard G-Shock. If you're interested more in watches used in the military though, I recommend you read some articles by Watches of Espionage. They have tons of great info on them and the history of tool watches in general. Moving back a little bit onto the topic of Zinn, today's obscure reference is sort of the final boss of mechanical tool watches. While other brands are creating watches that look the part of a tool, Zinn's EZM 13.1 plays the part as well, despite its $4,000 price tag. Because this watch was designed for German special forces, it requires a number of special features to have a sufficient resistance to harsh conditions. At its base, it's a diver's chronograph with 500 meters of water resistance that uniquely has usable pushers underwater. The watch is filled with inert argon gas, and the movement uses special lubricants that allow it to be incredibly temperature resistant. On the 12 o'clock right side lug, there's a small window with a copper sulfide crystal inside that absorbs internal moisture and changes color over time. This indicates to the owner when the watch likely needs to be serviced, which is a great touch. Visually, the dial has highly legible indices and hands, with a minimalistic color scheme. The crown and pushers are on the left side, but not because it's a left-handed watch, but rather because it allows for pusher usage while wearing gloves. It's got the classic Zinn bead-blasted finish on the case and bracelet, which I do believe has micro-adjustment as well. The case itself has magnetic field protection too, only adding to the long list of practical specifications. The only downsides of this watch to me are that it's rather large and thick, but that should be expected of a watch with half a kilometer of water resistance. Of course, as I said, it's quite expensive for a tool, and really can't be justified over something like a G-Shock. But unlike other luxury tool watches, this one has abilities, aesthetics, and is actually used as a tool in an official capacity. You really can't ask for much more than that. One thing I've noticed while making these discussion videos is that watch enthusiasts often feel the need to justify why they enjoy watches. Just like the pitfalls of other communities, we lean on the utility of obsolete or niche products, listing off specifications that we'll never use, and cling on to edge case scenarios to rationalize our purchases, instead of just admitting that we think they're cool, and that we enjoy the allure of expensive gear, or the aesthetic of essentially men's jewelry. I think a dose of this acknowledgement of why we're actually buying watches is not only healthy, but also productive in helping us understand what we truly value in collecting the most. But those were just some of my burning thoughts lately in regards to tool watches. How do all of you feel about them? Do you find a lot of utility in yours, or is it more of the aesthetic you find most enjoyable? If you want to see more discussions like this, check out this video where I talk about how watch brands are still innovating, even when it feels like everything's already been done before. Thank you for taking the time to watch.